Hey guys, it's Greg with By the Bootstraps, btbootstraps.com. Check out the store, check out the social media, links will be below. Going to talk about the shootings that happened over the weekend in El Paso and Dayton, Ohio. Terrible, terrible events, terrible circumstances that just happened. Once again, we have this insane people, evil people creating havoc, mayhem, hurting individuals that don't deserve to be hurt, targeting people that don't deserve to be targeted. And the problem is, at the end of the day, it comes down to a mental health issue. It comes down to an insane mentality. People, they want to blame guns. They want to blame the acts of these individuals on politicians. They want to blame everything except the person, the individual. And really what it comes down to at the end of the day is that some people are they're mentally insane. They're crazy. They're evil. And that's really what it comes down to. They're evil. There's no other way to describe it. This guy down in El Paso, Texas, he wasn't even from El Paso, Texas. He was from Dallas. Decides to go down to El Paso, open fires, and kills 20 people in Walmart, which we all know the story. All right, we all have heard the news. We've all seen it. It's been nonstop wall-to-wall coverage. And then he left his manifesto, which I read some of it. The guy is I would say, borderline left, like severe lefty. He was all about climate change. He even said in his manifesto that this has nothing to do with Trump. Can you move her, please? Has nothing to do with Trump. Has all to do with the fact that he had this stuff planned out in advance, and that he for whatever reason he was blaming the illegal aliens coming over, and invading essentially. Nutcase, and then the dude from Ohio, right? First of all, God bless those police officers for being Johnny on the spot. And the amount of courage that it took for those men to rush into that situation with an active shooter and then to take him out, quickly. I mean, thank God that they were able to act the way that they did and was able to take this man out within a minute's time frame. Because, just think about this guy in 1 minute killed 9 people. And what could have happened had he had the opportunity to have more time? Thankfully, the man in blue stepped up. They reacted quickly. They put a stop to the situation, and that situation, which could have been way worse, was actually better. But here's the part that I want to talk about. That is the part that disturbs me. All right. Since these two horrible incidences happened, the bodies weren't even cold before the Democrat Party started coming out and screaming about gun control and about how all of this is Trump's fault and how all of this is his responsibility, his supporters' responsibility, and how we need to step up and start legislating more gun laws. Now, I'm a huge advocate of the Second Amendment. I myself do not own guns. I've mentioned this before. It's a personal choice because of the children in my household. We have a newborn child, and we have a very curious 9-year-old and things like that. And so I choose not to have guns in the house. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not opposed to taking them down to the firing range, at least a 9-year-old, and showing her gun safety and showing her, how to treat a gun, how to respect a gun, and things like that. Just at the moment, I personally don't want a gun in the house, but I know there are millions of people in the United States who do want to have guns in the house, and they feel like that's a right. And quite frankly, you should have that right if you want that right. It's well within our Second Amendment rights to have that. And I would not impose to take that away. So when they talk about red flag laws and restriction, universal background checks, and things like that, I kind of say, hey, pump the brakes here, because that just opens the door in my mind to a lot more restrictions than what there possibly should be. Plus, it doesn't take away the fact that our cultural society from 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, we had guns of the same nature. All right, I know everyone gets well, the anti-gun people get all freaked out about things like AR-15s. Oh my God, it's an AR-15. It's a weapon of war. No, it's not. It's just a semi-automatic rifle. You can't pull the trigger and unload 20 rounds at one shot. It's one shot per trigger squeeze. It's no different than a shotgun. It's no different than a handgun. It's no different than any other semi-automatic rifle. All right. Quite frankly, I know some people who are real big gun advocates are going to get on me for saying this, but it's almost like a revolver in a way, in the fact that, yes, there's differences. I know that. All right, so don't get on my case about that. But you're only going to fire a round for every time you pull that trigger. All right. Plus, I have never heard of a gun getting up, walking off the counter, pointing its muzzle against someone's skull, and then blowing the brains out all on its own. that gun requires the someone behind it to actually pull that trigger. It has someone is required to actually produce the act of violence that is necessary to cause the reaction that it does. You know, it's just like a knife. Knives and knife attacks in other countries where guns are banned are prevalent. You know, same thing with beatings, baseball bats, right? People go out there and they beat people to death with baseball bats, with clubs, with rod irons, with, you know, they stab people to death with knives and stuff like that. The knife didn't do that on its own. It sat there all by itself. It did not walk up, you know, it did not get up, walk over to Busan over in, you know, Japan and start wildly swinging itself on its own. It required the actions of a person of a deranged mindset. All right. Now, where am I going with this? Going back to what happened over the weekend. Like I said, it did not take almost any time for the bodies to cool down before these 2020 Democratic presidential candidates out there to show this false moral outrage. You know, this issue happened over the weekend. Now keep in mind, the same weekend that in Chicago there were over 50 shots fired, and I think 7 people were killed in Chicago. That's just one weekend. This happens in almost every major city in America, weekend after weekend after weekend after weekend. It increases more in the summertime because more people are about and you know, they're out and about and doing things, but no one mentions anything about that. You know, no one mentions about the gun-free zones in places like Chicago, for example, that has one of the highest rates of violence in America. Baltimore. I think I just read a story in the news today that Baltimore is up to its 200th murder this year already. You know, where is the outcry and the outrage from these candidates about this weekly violence that happens in America, but no one says anything? Instead, they focus on these mass shootings, which are horrible in and of themselves, because no one wants to see a mass shooting, obviously. At least I would hope, obviously, outside of those deranged, mentally challenged people, but most normal people don't want to see this. But what scares me is the rhetoric that's coming out of these people's mouths, particularly these candidates that are running for the U.S. you know, for the U.S. Nomination for the Democratic Party. Particularly today, I heard 2 stories that really scared me in the fact that it makes me wonder, where the hell are we going with this? On my way home, I heard on the news that Joaquin Castro, which is a representative in San Antonio, who is the brother of presidential candidate Julian Castro, released for his San Antonio residents the top donors of the Trump campaign. Why? You know, what's the purpose of that? I'll tell you what the purpose is. The purpose is to intimidate and silence those people who might support the president and what the president wants to do. The entire purpose is to get those people to be afraid. He released their names, addresses, telephone numbers, and their place of employment. The only purpose to do that has nothing to do with moving the agenda forward, getting to a talking point where we can have an open dialogue and a conversation. No, that is to intimidate and silence people who might support the president. Whether you agree or disagree with his politics, whether you agree or disagree with what he stands for, that is a huge violation in my mind of, well, I actually don't even know what is a violation of. You know, campaign rules, you know, donor suppression, I don't know, honestly. I mean, I really can't think of what the law is that be violated, but there's only one reason to do that, and that is to intimidate those people who might support the president. I mean, it's bad enough that people who support the president, whether you like him or not, you know, they can't put bumper stickers on their cars for fear of being keyed, damaged, windows being broken out, or God forbid your truck being burnt out, like you know what happened in Texas, you know. You can't put a sign in front of your yard for a Republican candidate for fear of it being removed, destroyed, your property being egged, or even broken into, or being physically assaulted. Oh wait, that's happened multiple times, and there's documented proof. One quick Google search, well, okay, maybe not Google, but one quick search on another search engine would probably show you that. In fact, it's been documented. And I know people are going to say, well, you can't trust this news source, but you can go to Breitbart and look it up. They've actually had multiple stories on that. Of course, the non-credible sources come from places like CNN and MSNBC. You know, the people who are non-biased. I refuse to believe that. But then you have today, on top of that, Cory Booker comes out and says that Trump should cancel all his arena tours, all his stops, his campaign stops, because they are a festering pool of racism and bigotry. So therefore, he, the president, should not be allowed to exercise his free speech. His supporters should not be allowed to exercise their free speech because of racism and bigotry. I've asked this question multiple times. Can you please point to a specific comment that the president said that is actually indicative of racism and bigotry? You know, like just one. Just one. I've said multiple times, he wasn't my candidate. He is now, obviously, because look at the other side. No way in hell. But name one. And they go back to his comments about, you know, Mexican is not sending their best and brightest. Well, at the time when he said that in 2015, yeah, he was absolutely correct. He was addressing not the legal immigration, but the illegal immigration, and the fact that Mexico was doing little to nothing to stop that illegal immigration. That was not an untrue statement. Now, everyone in the media jumped on that because, like, oh my God, he's being racist. No, that's a true statement, and it's a fair statement, and it's an honest statement. And look at our prison system down on the border states, and how many illegal aliens and people of Hispanic descent who are not from this country populate those prisons. And how much do we spend to house those prisoners, to give them medical attention, food, care, clothing, shelter.
Entertainment.
It might be in prison, but it's still, you know, it's still all those things, and it cost us. It was not an unfair or untrue statement. Now, granted, his words might have been brash. They might have been harsh. You might not have liked it. It might have hurt your fifis, but it was still true. You have people standing outside Mitch McConnell's house right now with death threats and wishing that he would die and wishing that he would get his, you know, he get stabbed in the back or stabbed in the heart, all because he tripped and fell and broke, I think it was his leg or something like that, his knee, over the weekend, and he required medical attention. You know, again, this party of tolerance, as they call it. You know, we're the party of acceptance. We're the party of tolerance, just as long as you agree with everything that we're saying. Going back to these two wonderful human examples of these shooters, what's really interesting is that one of them wrote that manifesto and said that he was planning this for a long time. This is a guy from El Paso, that he didn't agree with Trump, but he was also a huge environmentalist. He was concerned about the overpopulation of what was going on, which would lead me to believe, based on that mindset, he was probably leaning more towards left. Now, I'm willing to not take that into like a complete solid consideration, just because of the fact that he's still alive. We can ask him, all right, and see if he can clarify that. Where is he coming from? So I'm willing to say he's not 100% sure down that pathway of extreme leftist mindsets, right? But we know for a fact that the dude from Ohio was a lefty, a big lefty. In fact, he was actually supportive of Elizabeth Warren. The same Elizabeth Warren who's running out there and screaming that every one of Trump's supporters are KKK members. Well, who's going to cause more division in our country? The guy who's saying, hey, let's make America great again and keep America great, and his supporters are saying, hey, let's live and let live, but let's work together to actually make a better society? Or most of the media, most of the candidates, most of the supporters running around screaming that if you don't agree with us, you must be a bigot, racist, homophobe, sexist, you know, some kind of ism and some kind of isist. You know, who is being more divisive? You tell me. Comment below, let me know what you guys think. I'll talk to you later.